So this is the last act, and I'm usually the last act. And it's a true life story because I used to live in Paris. And this was the beginning of my life in Paris. And my vignette is entitled Tutus in Paris, and you'll find out why. I came to live in Paris without social connections when I was about 30 in 1977, after having lived for 6 months in Mexico. I quickly realized that walking into an art gallery opening, called a vernissage in French, in Saint-Germain, the art district on the left bank, around 7 o'clock, was the best place to meet interesting people. One Wednesday evening, I picked a known Russian artist's vernissage, dressed up, and off I strode, a little nervous, as I knew no one in the capital of culture, Paris, the city of lights. I knew very little about the Parisian art world, but loved the Impressionists and the Fauves. Mikhail Shemiakin was a professional artist and de rigueur. The gallery was packed with branché guests, so one could hardly view his paintings on the wall. It was just a place to be seen and not heard. Tired and alone in a crowd of posh people, I sat on a sofa next to a distinguished, much older-looking gentleman who was looking bored and detached. "Quelle est votre opinion des peintures?" I inquired innocently. "What do you think of the paintings?" He glanced at me sideways, uninterested, until he heard my obvious English accent. Speaking fluent English, he suddenly perked up, explaining he had lived many years in London in the 50s as Baron's photographic assistant. Baron, who died in 1965, had been the famous London Society photographer. Excited to be speaking English again, he rose and took me, gauche, half his age, Jilliana, in hand, introducing me to his Russian friend, the artist that tout Paris was talking about. He proudly introduced himself as Jilliana from Moscow, a Russian émigré. Never had I met one before, or for that matter since. I confided in him I'd just arrived in Paris and was living in the Rue Campagne Première in Montparnasse. I was thus informed that not only had scenes from the famous film Au bout de souffle been shot in that street, but also Modigliani had committed suicide by throwing himself out of his studio window. Genia, of course, was knowledgeable in the arts. Being my protector for the evening, and as it was early, Genia suggested, after a surprise dinner invitation, that we should pay a visit to his friend, the German fashion photographer Willy Mewald, at his studio in the Rue de la Grande Chaumière, near my street in Montparnasse, who hosted salons on Wednesdays and Saturday evenings. He went to make a phone call to ask if the salon was on, asking the person who answered the phone if it was on. "Mais oui," was the reply. So off we went into the night, taking a taxi and chatting about art and photography, which I knew in those days nothing about. I had come to Paris to be educated, and educated I was over the coming years. We arrived at Willy's studio, hidden at the end of a secret garden, tucked away in a famous street for its art school, around the corner from the Metro Vavin and the famous Le Select Brasserie, which was to become my second home on the Boulevard Montparnasse. Genia opened the unlocked door, and we entered another exciting private world. There was elderly, distinguished Willy on his couch in an original artist's atelier with a high glass roof. His black and white portraits of famous artists such as Chagall, Picasso and Braque adorned the walls, and he was surrounded by Spanish transvestites wearing shocking pink tutus. Well, not all of them, Some had long evening dresses in garish colours, others dressed in bling and little else, wearing wigs and very heavy makeup. Everyone was laughing and speaking Spanish very loudly, so I joined in. Hola, ¿qué tal? The outrageous party guests were all shapes and sizes and looked fabulous, having fun. Jilliana and I realised we had gate-crashed a private birthday party for a cabaret singer called Carla, who was presented with a big tiered cake full of sparklers on the top of the pink icing. Willie rose to greet me in English with a heavy guttural German accent. I can't do it. Jilliana, you've come on the wrong night. Bring Jilliana on a Saturday night. I think she would prefer that. He nodded and smiled at me knowingly. A charming man who was to later be rediscovered by Jutta Neyman at the end of his long life as a recognised, talented black and white portrait and fashion photographer. Jilliana suggested we leave as he had just been propositioned by one of the guests on his way to the bathroom. He assured me women were his preference. We left, and he accompanied me to my nearby abode at 27 Rue Campagne Première. However, he hovered at the street front door, waiting to be invited in for who knows what, saying he was lonely and looking for a relationship. I thanked him for the evening and agreed to meet him for the Saturday Salon, but made certain he understood there would be no relationship. Willie Mevald, the fashion photographer of Dior's new look, was the catalyst for my new life in Paris, although he never knew how his Saturday salons would educate and give me the self-confidence I lacked, leading me to find my new identity. September, and I have Laura Wilkinson